Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Team Comp Tuesday. This series where every Tuesday we go over a different team, be they meta or be they for fun. And this week we definitely have one of the top premier meta teams here. I figured with the Abyss rotating just a couple days ago, and possibly even some more people joining us because of Sumeru, I figured now is a perfect time to talk about one of the better meta teams in the game. Now this meta team also comprises entirely of 4 stars, even though I will talk a little bit up about some variations that can be made if you want to, or if you're going to pull for some certain 5 stars. We're going to be getting into that as the video goes on. But this team is absolutely insane, even just with the 4 stars, and has very good scaling with better artifacts, more constellations you get as you play the game, better weapons, more refinements, etc. Basically, good out of the box, but also has very good scaling the longer you play the game. This is a traditional Taser comp, comprised entirely of 4 stars. The general concept is to use Official's Ascension 4 passive here. Here it is, that does a little bit of extra electro damage hits whenever you trigger an electro reaction, and basically spam that by triggering as many electro reactions as quick as humanly possible. And to do that, we use Electro Charge with the insane Hydro application from Jingcho, very good damage off his ultimate as well as Beidou, who's a character that doesn't get a lot of love but is extremely powerful, but sadly does have a little bit of energy requirements and stuff like that that makes her maybe not as popular as other units could be. But calling her an Electro Zhangling isn't actually too far off her power level. She is very good. And this team also takes advantage of Sucrose, who is a Catalyst user, who, for anybody who doesn't know, Catalyst users always use their element whenever they attack, and because Sucrose is a Nemo, this means Sucrose can essentially swirl on her auto attacks, as well as proc her Viridescent Venerer set, which is what carries the damage shred for the team. And what you get is just a whole ton of electro reactions, a whole ton of numbers going off, a whole ton of crowd control. Lots of great stuff going on with this team. This is a team that I've just recently built on some of my accounts, and I am absolutely loving it. It is super powerful, it is super good, and it's a lot of fun too. I actually quite like it. So I hope you're interested and you're going to stick around. But we're going to go to another showcase, and then we're going to go on to character builds. Alright, now we're going to be going into the character builds, but I just did want to mention really quick that this team does do less damage to single targets, so maybe why that Vishap kill maybe wasn't so crazy. This is arguably the team's worst scenarios in pure single target. We'd actually be talking about a slight modification you can make to make the team a lot better in single target in another week, probably next week actually. That's an option you could tech into, basically just like a single character swap, but it does kind of change how the team is played a little bit to make it much better in single. But even in single, it's still very powerful, and the damage just gets nutty in AoE. Like, definitely if there's an AoE side of the Abyss, this team will absolutely smurf through it. But let's get going on the character builds. Alright, first up here we have Beidou. For weapon, any sort of damage-based weapon is fine. Crit rate weapon here, Serpent Spine, very strong. Other options, Blacklift, fine. Sea Lord, if you have it, fine. Rain Slasher, actually not too bad in this kind of team since she is proccing Electric Charged. Prototype Archaic, if you have it. Basically, any kind of stat stick that gives damage is what you want. Ideally, you don't want to go for an EM weapon if you can avoid it, because they generally have lower base attacks as well. So, and a lot of their effects aren't super useful to Betos. So try to go damage weapon, and if you absolutely have to, go ER Sands. Roughly, you want about 180 ER, I find, per rotation. If there's more enemies dying, you need less energy, but around 180 is pretty good. Artifact set, you want Emblem of Severed Fate. The 4-piece on this is just very good. It gives her a little bit of EM that she needs, and then also converts EM to bonus ult damage. So, actually, pretty good, especially since you do actually want to build a little bit of ER. This set was coming out was a very nice addition to this. Just general stuff, you want crit rate or crit damage on the helm, electro damage on the goblet, energy recharge on the sands. If you have god tier substats, you can swap this with an attack sands. She will do a lot more damage if you put her on attack sands, but you might have problems funneling her energy depending on how well you play, how many enemies are dying, that kind of thing. So for comfortability, I run an ER sands, and it's not that big of a deal, especially because of the emblem passive here giving us bonus damage based on our ER. For talents, both Burst and Ult are very good. Her ultimate is very powerful, and it does a lot of the damage. I normally don't talk about constellations, but the important constellation here that'll give you a lot of value if you can get it is C2. This allows her lightning thing to jump 2 more times, but the way her lightning works is it jumps to 3 targets now, but if you get this, it goes up to 5, but it can actually jump back and forth. So in like a 2-target situation, it'll jump from 1 to 2, then back to 1, then back to 2, then back to 1. So that's very strong, but by no means needed. I've been playing this setup on an account that has C0 of all these characters, basically, and it's perfectly fine. Definitely try to get this up as much as you can, but also perfect parrying on her E especially will give you a lot of bonus damage if you get good at it, so that's something to keep in mind. And it's actually kind of fun. I kind of like her perfect parry mechanic. I think it's one of the cooler mechanics that 4-stars have. Up next is Official, the premier Electro 4-star. Absolutely insane, off-field sub DPS, good energy battery for Beto, good things all around. Because this is a non-Dendro team, you don't really care a ton about her elemental mastery. You'd rather have her on more attack. All my EM there is from substats. For weapons, you have a couple options. Any stat stick works perfectly fine. So any crit rate, crit damage kind of weapon, an attack-based weapon if you have it. Stringless, obviously very good in this kind of team comp, just making Oz do more damage. Favonius possibly even alright for Beto, like making sure Beto gets her ult back. But personally, I'd go damage stat sticks, so Black Cliff. Heck, even if you want to make the craftable that has an attack percent sub, go for it. Be my guess, that'd be pretty good tier 2, or stringless if you have it. For artifacts, there are 2 options here. You can either go supportive, Tenacity of the Millilith. This lowers her personal damage, but can increase other people's damage. But if you're heavy invested into her, like I am pretty heavy invested into Official because of Dendro and me just playing a lot of Electro teams. She's very good at Electro teams. I personally like going for a damage set instead. So 2-piece Thundering and 2-piece of any attack set is the way to go. Very standard. She doesn't need energy as well, so very standard crit rate or crit damage, electro damage, and an attack sands. For talents, Oz is really the only one you care about since he does most of the shooting. And her ultimate you can honestly leave unleveled because all you do is you just hit your Q, swap off to drop a second Oz to keep Oz up. And that's all you really care about. And most of her strength comes from her A4 passive here, which essentially just makes her do another electro hit, enabling even more electro reactions, enabling even more damage hits to be going out. Alright, next up is Sucrose. Now, my Sucrose is not perfect here. Ideally, you want all of your Nemo units 90 of 90. My Sucrose isn't there. Also, her weapon, 80 of 90, needs to be better. But weapon is where we'll start. So, Sack Frags, probably the best option you got here. Thrilling Tales is an option for low investment, since you don't really care a ton about officials like attack stat, or not official, sorry, Sucrose's attack stats. Despite her being the on-field attacker, it's mainly because how fast she can proc swirl and everything like that. But I prefer Sack Frags, more ease for grouping, more energy for more ults, all good stuff. Artifacts are easy Viridescent Veteran with as much EM as you could possibly. I don't have her on an EM set. That was all on a crit set. All the footage you've been watching is on a crit set, which is a lot less damage. Wow. That's insane that she was doing that well with that little EM. You know what? Scuffed YouTuber. I'm gonna leave that in. But I will do another showcase with the actual EM so we can actually show off some of the difference. But yeah, that's a pretty big deal. So all EM on her pieces, nothing else really matters. Talents, again, her talents don't matter a ton. I level up the E and the burst just because. You could level up the normal attack if you wanted to. But again, the main reason you're using her is to trigger a metric ton of swirls, because she can swirl on her autos, on her E's. A slight note, if you can see me do it in some of the footage, if you apply Electro and then try to get the ult to fuse with Electro instead of Hydro, you can get 20% damage bonus to Electro, which is your main damage source. So that's something I kind of do as a tech, but not relevant, not needed to be played. Just a slight note. All right, last but not least is Xingqiu. For Xingqiu, we have Sack Sword as his best in slot. Any energy recharge sword works, but Sack Sword is the best, as it allows, as his E hit twice, he has a very high chance to reset its cooldown. It's got high ER. Artifacts, 4 Emblem is his best in slot, but I have pretty good substats on a 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Hydro, so that's why I'm going 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Hydro. Energy recharge or attack on the Sands. You could probably honestly get away with an attack Sands. I'm just lazy, so I like to over energy recharge my Xingqius. Totally could get more damage by putting him on an attack Sands. As long as you've got somewhere in the range of like 200 ER, you're fine. So totally could run an attack damage Sands here if you want. Hydro damage on his goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the hat. For talents, equally level Rain Cutter or Alt and E, as both do really good damn. This is the showcase now that we have actually noticed our mistake and put EM artifacts on our Sucrose. Okay, so yeah, so from the footage looking back at it, it shaved about 5 seconds off, and it was only like a 25-second fight. So I got something, it'd say like a 20% DPS increase for my team by swapping to EM. Which, that's not exact science. Maybe even if it's only like 3 or 4 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds off like a 25-second fight is an insane jump in damage. So yeah, make sure you build your Sucrose with EM, and don't forget that you have her Zhao battery artifacts on, and have her built some wonky way that most normal people will never use her for. But yeah, as you can see with all those other showcases though, this team is very, very strong, even with one of the characters basically having the wrong stats on. Very powerful. Alright, now we're just going to get to a quick little discussion port here before we get over to the testing dummy and kind of do a mock rotation, explain a little bit how it works. As you'll notice in the Abyss clip, I did get a little bit low on damage, and this is a team that is, or not damage, sorry, on HP, and this is a team played without a healer. Now, you can 100% get away with this team without having a healer for a couple reasons. One of them being that Beto's burst actually has gives you damage reduction on it, as well as giving you a tiny shield at C1, but giving any amount of shield, you know, is nice. On top of that, Jing Cho also gives damage reduction with his E. The swords around you, it gives you damage reduction and healing. So you actually are very tanky on your Sucrose, even without having a healer, especially if you practice it a little bit and play well. Like I say, I've literally been playing this team for like less than a week. I've never tried it on that floor in Abyss, and I literally just ran in and started smashing my buttons, and it's still cleared in like a minute, which is insanely good, especially for a team of all 4 stars. Especially 4 stars where one of them was running the wrong substats. EM Sucrose would have nuked the heck out of that floor. But because some people are probably wondering, let's talk about healer options and whether they're worth it or not. Now, one of the options people do bring up is you could, now that we have Electro Healer, go someone like Kuki. I personally don't like this. Don't like the Kuki angle, because I think Beto brings so much damage, and Fish will do, that dropping either or of them just for healing, not really worth, especially because Kuki's personal DPS is quite low. She does require very little field time, which is good, but I'd kind of stay away from Kuki. Same thing with Barbara. I don't think she's very good for this team as a healer. But if you do want to opt into a healer, Kokomi's banner is coming up, and Kokomi is actually a kind of alright healer for this team, because you can either use her completely off field with just dropping her jellyfish, having her give Tenacity of the Mill with buff to Beto, apply Hydro basically just through her jellyfish and swirling, or you can even alternatively use her as the on-field auto attacker if you're very high invested into her, get her to actually do some damage. So that is an option, and that is a way you can play this team without a healer. Don't feel like you need to pull Kokomi to play this team. I still firmly believe the best setup for the team is these 4 stars. But if you do want a healer, or if you want to free up Jing Cho for another team, Kokomi is an option, and that's partially why I wanted to make this video, because she's coming out, so that could give you something to think about. Alright, Mr. Training Dummy. So just as a general rule of thumb, your goal is to have Beto ult up and have Jing Cho's ult up at the same time. So just gotta get everything up and going. I should have dodged that better. Beto ult, and then we're literally just auto attacking on Sucrose, applying our E, dropping our ultimate, stop blocking, you jerk. Making sure we have Oz down. And you just literally rotate through and proc all of your different skills as needed. Get your Jing Cho burst back up. And very ton of damage. That is one of the nice things about this team, is there isn't necessarily a hyper specific rotation like certain teams have. Your goals are very simple. Make sure Oz is down. Get Beto ult up as much as possible. Get Jing Cho ult up as much as possible. Ideally have them use them back to back. And then just auto attack, E spam, and ultimate on Sucrose basically as you need it, as you have your stuff going on the ground, just to trigger a ton of reactions and a ton of damage. Alright, and that was our 4-star only Taser team. Such a good team. I hope you'll give it a try. A lot of the units on this team are good to build anyways, because they're good in a whole bunch of teams, with probably the exception of Beto, who has really only used a ton in this team and maybe 1 or 2 more. But I want to thank you for watching. I was considering redoing a lot of the showcases, but I think it's even funnier that this team was still performing very well, arguably one of the better performances that we've had on this show, even though, you know, they're very short fights, but one of the better performances we had on the show without the right artifacts and builds. I just think that's hilarious. But I hope you give the team a try. Next week, we're actually going to be doing a slight variation of this team to give it a lot more single target damage, and that involves the new Dendro element. So if you're interested in that, I hope you come back next week, and I hope you have a great day.